Whew. That has been an interesting one. That really has been an interesting one. Hello, everyone. So, Windswept here. Today is the Marshal Nays, and honestly, I think the luck of Marshal Nay has been infecting today. In fact, I think there was a curse attached to the name by the time of World War One, and it has definitely made the recording of this video difficult. Everything was scheduled for this morning, but there was a problem at work, and then there was a problem with the family. They're okay, but there've been issues all day, and you'll see where this is coming from. And even now, when I'm recording it, I noticed that it's got Thursday, the 29th of April, 2021 on there, not the 4th of May. So at least it shows what day I actually wrote this to record it. So, the Marshal Nays. There were two of these beasts. Believe it or not. There was Su and Ne. Now, you might think it's very strange the Royal Navy naming two of their monitors after French marshals. Not only French marshals, but let's be honest, Ne was, well, Ne, of course, managed to get executed after the 100 Days escapade and the Battle of Waterloo, including, well, you know, he sought death at the Battle of Waterloo, but he managed to fail to achieve that. I don't know. And then there's Soule. Soule managed to survive. And that is one thing Soule is. Soule is a survivor. And that's visible in the ships. Now, you'll notice first thing first about these monitors, they're quite big. They have 15-inch guns. That makes them cute. That also makes them pretty darn capable ships. And pretty critical ships to be ordered. Now, the Marshal Nays are ordered in, well, to be honest, they're ordered in 1914, and rather too quick. The whole idea was that they were supposed to receive diesel engines, which were supposed to be space-saving, as they wouldn't require boilers rooms and wouldn't require large funnels, reducing the amount of superstructure. And well, basically, these engines were nicked, broadly speaking, from, well, they were supposed to be being built for some smallish freighters. To say they prove slow and unreliable is me being particularly characteristically nice. Or uncharacteristically nice. Here's the quote before we get into the stats from Reginald Bacon, and this is from page 52 of that lovely, concise story, the concise story of the Dover Patrol that he published in 1932. These monitors did useful work with their guns, as will be narrated later on, but they, especially the Marshal Ney, provided the patrol with excitement and amusement. Good old Ney. But cheery Captain Hugh J. Tweedy, how he missed them both afterwards. Reliability both in officer and a ship is the first thing that an admiral values. The Marshal, judged by this standing, was a hopeless sinner. But her officers and men made up for her deficiencies. Her engines not infrequently exploded when asked to start. Her engine room was scarred as if by shrapnel from the fragments of burst cylinder heads, and the escapes of the engine room staff were miraculous. Her chief engineer, Mr. Swan, stuck to the engines like a Trojan and almost overcame their bad habits. And really, when talking to him, you were almost converted to the opinion that that just one little alteration would make them start next time the ship was required. Add to this, when they did not burst, they usually would not start, and when one started, no one liked to stop them for fear of not being able to start them again. But without exaggeration, and the more they burst and the worse they behaved, the more Mr. Swan loved them, and the more cheery Captain Tweedy became. This engine issue is why you will notice there are 2 ships in this class, and yet there are 2 sets of armaments being listed. Ney specifically had a lot more issues than Sul. And so Ney loses her 15-inch guns for a 9.2-inch gun. And eventually loses the 15-inch gun for, to France. And gains 2 more 6-inch guns. And so ends up with 6-inch guns. They have fun because, like most monitors, their armament grows and decreases depending on how successful their crew are at nicking stuff. And with these ships, they really are dependent on their nicking stuff. They displaced 6,670 tons, 6,780 tons as normal, and 7,000 tons fully loaded. Their length wasn't great. Was 355 feet 8 inches, and a beam of 90 foot 3 inches, and means that there's almost a sort of 1-to-3 ratio of beam to length, which is never great for handling, it seems, in ship history. And a draft of 10 foot 5 inches, making them not as shallow as we perhaps like, but they were fine. They were built by Palmer's Shipbuilding and Iron Company. Yeah. I'm just going into the picture. So let's get a story of the 15-inch guns. So, originally, the 15-inch guns were supposed to be the new ones coming from Renown and Repulse, because Renown and Repulse are cut-down R-class battleships, i.e., they take an R-class battleship design and go, it's terrible. Yeah. Instead of doing the sensible thing and just binning the lot and building more Queen Elizabeths, they decide we're going to make a battlecruiser out of them. How joyous. And so they go, right, and that's 2 turrets saved. Because we take out turrets and add in more horsepower. That's basically how you get a battlecruiser from a battleship. The admiral the person who decides that these turrets should be taken out and these turrets should go to monitors is, of course, Fisher and Winston Churchill. And they decide to use them for 2 monitors, which were initially going to be called M13 and M14. Perhaps it was the M13 designation, who knows? Although, technically, that would seem to have been Marshal Sul, which was M13, and then Marshal Ney was M14, but we'll leave that to one side. Anyway, they become Sul and Ney because it's in honor of our allies. We're naming ships after people we kind of thwarted at every turn we could. And don't expect there to be any bad juju with them. So, what happens is, unfortunately, the turrets for Renown and Repulse are delayed anyway. But don't worry, because, well, HMS Ramillies is having trouble getting herself ready. These things happen, you know. Their battleships take a while to get ready. Ramillies had only been in construction since November 1913 at this point. She wouldn't be commissioned till 1917, mainly because no problems getting turrets for her. So they take 2 of her turrets because they're available at this point. Turrets and guns take a long time. They are some of the longest lead items in any ship, and in monitors they are a critical thing. They're why the next class after this I'm going to be talking about actually exist, because frankly the RN needed shallow ships which could fire at land targets, and honestly it was easier to build hulls and ships than it was to find guns. As we've already been over, they rip guns off pre-dreadnoughts. They, in this case, take guns off a brand new battleship before it's even finished. After having originally been planned to take guns which were no longer needed for 2 battleships, they've converted to battle cruisers. That makes sense. I can get behind that. That seems a sensible use of 2 turrets. Although, there are so many other things they could have done with them. Like, I don't know, make a 3rd battle cruiser? That'd be nice. Let's see. The Revenge class were supposed to have HMS supposed to be Revenge, Resolution, Royal Oak, Royal Sovereign, Ramillies, Resistance, Renown, and Repulse. Now, Renown and Repulse are, of course, redesigned as battle cruisers. Why not Resistance as well? No, 1 more turret, you get another battle cruiser. 3 R-class battle cruisers. Just imagining World War II with a 3rd R-class battle cruiser. And HMS Hood. Now that would have been a full battle cruiser squadron surviving to World War II. 3 Rs and Hood as the squadron flagship. Oh, beauty. Anyway, leaving that to one side. So, the guns actually come from Ramillies and are the reason why, let's see, Revenge is commissioned in February 1916, Resolution, December 1916, Royal Oak, May 1916, Royal Sovereign, April 1916. Ramillies, commissioned September 1917. And by the way, her pennant Revenge is pennant number 06, Resolution 09, Royal Oak 08, Royal Sovereign 05, and Ramillies 07. Gets even worse when you consider when they're laid down, because Revenge is laid down on 22nd of December 1913, Resolution 29th of November 1913, Royal Oak and Royal Sovereign are both laid down on the 15th of January 1914, and Ramillies was actually laid down first on the 12th of November 1913 by William Beardmore and Company, who are pretty good battleship builders in Glasgow, Clydeside area. Sorry, this is a little bit of a rant, I know, but only half of these ships was actually any use with the 15-inch gun. So, one was a waste of a 15-inch turret, one was a use of a 15-inch turret. And for this, you sacrificed a battleship, which you could have had in service. Let's consider this respectfully at least a year earlier. Now, I'm not gonna ask many things, but okay. That's not another battleship around for the Battle of Jutland, but that's quickly going to be rebuilding any losses in dreadnought numbers, even though those are battle cruisers lost, after the Battle of Jutland. It would seem useful to have had. And HMS Resistance would have been a cool name for a battle cruiser. Resistance will track you down. Your resistance to resistance is futile. Come on. You can have so much fun with HMS Resistance as a name. Anyway. So. That's the story of the 15-inch guns. Traditionally, when you're talking about them, the amount of people who will turn around and go, oh, they got the guns from Renown and Repulse. So, no, they didn't. They got Ramillies guns. You could have actually, still, this is going to sound strange, you could have taken 4 of the R-class and turned them all into battle cruisers. Bear with me here. You'd have saved 4 turrets, so the cost of the turrets for one battleship version of them. So that would have meant you could have actually, you'd have saved a lot of money, and you could have had 4 of them built and in service fairly quickly. And you could have had Ramillies, Resistance, Renown, and Repulse as your battleships. Or, well, technically, if you're going by numbers, which should have been 9, 10, 11, and 12, they should have been Resolution, Resistance, Repulse, and Renown. But that doesn't happen. It's so sad. Resistance is cancelled in August 1914. We're literally in World War I and you're cancelling a battleship. The longer I study the politics and discussion of the beginning of World War I and World War II, the more I find people strange. They take a blooming building holiday at the beginning of World War II and go, well, I can understand them concentrating on small ships, but I would have kept the big ships at least ticking over so they didn't all stagnate and you then have to go. Then you have to wait ages for getting replacement aircraft carriers, etc. online because you lose them through incompetence. Anyway, so most of their service, and Marshal here is pictured on trials because you try and find a decent picture of her with her 15-inch guns when she's not on trials, come with the Dover Patrol. And they get up to quite a lot of things here. They have a lot of fun. They really do. And the joy of this sort of discussion and this book is that you find out just generally what they were trying to do. And the Dover Patrol cover so many sins. They really do. And its best example is to talk about the ships of Dover Patrol, which is 53 onwards. Ships of the Patrol. they had battleships, 15-inch monitors, the Marshal Ney, 12-inch monitors, 9.2-inch monitors, light cruisers, torpedo gunboats, tribal destroyers, the World War I variants, 30-knot destroyers, kite balloon ships, trawlers, minesweepers, drifters, and submarines, aeroplane carriers, and airships. First and foremost in patrol, we had in the patrol the Revenge, Captain V.B. Montello, afterwards called the Redoubtable when the new battleship the Revenge was commissioned, and classed with her was the Venerable, the ship that temporarily relieved her. The Revenge was an obsolete battleship fitted with watertight compartments, exterior to and below the waterline of the ship, commonly called bulges. They served as an exploding screen to Whitehead torpedoes. She had 2 turrets, each with 2 short 13.5-inch guns, relined and reduced in bore to 12-inch. These guns had a range of about 16,000 yards. She was also armed with a 6-inch battery, having a range of about 13,000 yards. By the way, when you reline and reduce the bore of a gun, you also in effect increase its caliber. So you can have really interesting effects on its capabilities. You take a short 13.5 and convert it into a moderately long 12-inch. She was also armed with a 6-inch battery, having a range of about 13,000 yards. The range of both could be increased by heeling the ship over to increase the elevation of the guns. This experience had, however, the disadvantage of exposing the hull below the waterline on the attacking side, which gave a chance of her being hauled below the deck. A more unsuitable vessel for coast work could not be imagined. A draft of water was 29 feet, far too much for close navigation amongst the shoals and minefields. In spite of these abilities, the Revenge figured in several operations, and in addition was of the greatest value in carrying out firing trials in the Thames, on which the whole structure of our subsequent long-range firing was based. So the association with the patrol was one of value and benefit to us. She suffered from one other defect. She had the prestige attaching to a battleship which, while valueless in increasing her services, would have reflected undue glory on the Germans if they had succeeded in sinking her. In other words, as her admiral, I had to keep her very, very safe because, frankly, if they'd sunk her, they'd have said, "We sunk a battleship." And yes, that battleship might be absolutely freaking useless, but no, we can't let them actually sink a battleship. It's like if every time anyone sunk a C-class cruiser or something like that, they would shout, "We sunk a cruiser." Now, it's terrible for the crew, and really the Royal Navy preferred not to lose them, but losing a C-class versus losing a Town class, which would the Royal Navy, if its arms were tied behind its back, say it would prefer? Gonna be the C-class. Of 15-inch monitors, there were 4. Well, there weren't actually, as we've already pointed out. Marshal Ney lost its guns, down to a 9.2. The Marshal Ney and the Marshal Schult, and later on the Erebus and Terror. The first 2 joined the patrol at the beginning of 1916, and were a distinct improvement in gun range over the 12-inch monitors, as 25,000 yards could be attained instead of 21,000. Unfortunately, they were too slow for work, only about 5 knots being generally obtained. 5 knots in waters where ordinary tides of 3 knots against a ship are often met with does not mean rapid travelling, nor does it aid navigation among shoals. Moreover, their steering was atrocious. It was not uncommon on the banks of the Belgian coast for one of these ships to swing 8 points, or 90 degrees off her course. Neither helm nor propeller would easily persuade her to return to her proper course. This is why the 15-inch guns end up going somewhere else from Ney. On one occasion, before the days of smokescreens, when we were firing on observation stations and military headquarters at Middelburg, German battery, the Tirpitz took us on, but at almost extreme range, so fortunately the fire was only moderately accurate. Ney was specially marked out by the battery for its attention, so ordered her to weigh away. This she did, and started the starboard engine. Port engine, however, refused to move. Then her helm jammed itself a hard starboard, so she commenced turning a series of circles. The supply of compressed air for engine started running short, so it was unwise to stop the starboard engine, as that engine was working the air compressor. Round and round she went in the tideway, quite out of control, unable to start the port, and afraid to stop the starboard engine. The Tirpitz 11-inch shells just missing her. until the Viking, Commander Edward R.G.R. Evans, was ordered to come to the rescue and tow her. This she did in a good style, covering the operation with a dense cloud of smoke from her funnels. The Marshal then retired ignominiously back to Dunkirk in tow of a destroyer at twice her normal full speed. Well, hey, we found a way to make them actually clock some waves. Give them a destroyer. A sense of humour quite made up for such minor annoyances. In the early days, before the extent of enterprise of the party enemy could be gauged, the monitors, including Ney and Salt, always berthed at night along inside Dunkirk harbour. Each passage in and out of the narrow, shallow entrance presented possibilities of untoward happenings, but careful handling anchors and an element of luck saved the wooden escapades on all but one occasion. Eventually, the Marshal was paid off to turn her turret over to one of the new 15-inch monitors and to have her engines radically altered. In the early part of 1917, she returned to the patrol to act as guard ship in the Downs, the merchant ship anchorage, with a good armour of 6-inch guns. Her advent was characteristic. Off Dungeness, she met an easterly gale and westerly tide and signalled that she was helpless and in danger of grounding on Dungeness. If, however, she kept the sea on her port bow, I knew that the tide would take her clear of the point. So as to cheer up her new captain, who evidently did not know her peculiar habits, I wirelessed to him that he was all right and that the Marshal usually navigated the waters of the patrol sideways. As a protection to the Downs, she was considerable value. The Marshal Sul had far more reliable engines, but her steering was bad and her speed slow. In fact, on advent of the Erebus and Terror, being loath to lose 2 additional 15-inch guns, I used to have her towed by one of these to the offing of the places we were going to bombard. It was a cumbersome method of going in and out of action, and with a more active enemy, would have hardly been justifiable. Moreover, it reduced the speed of the whole squadron, which on short summer nights, when the long trips across the North Sea had to be made, was a distinct disadvantage. Her guns were good, her captain, Captain William D. Patton, and afterwards Captain G. Ronald D. Blount, and her officers and men were keen, so that in spite of her shortcomings, she was a valuable unit. I will be getting on to the Erebus and Terror in further discourses, so I will not bring them into this here. And I know this is not going to be a massively long one, mainly because their careers as monitors was not particularly long. I can't think why. Oh, sense of humour. Surprisingly enough, Marshal Sul does have a post-World War One service. Doesn't she look pretty like this? She spends most of her years after service as a gunnery ship. She's the tender to the gunnery school HMS Excellent Portsmouth, and in March 1919 is moved to Devonport for a similar role. She's decommissioned in March 1921, recommissioned in 1924, and she goes to Chatham from April 1926 onwards as a training ship. She actually has her armaments removed in March 1940, and her guns are fitted to to HMS Roberts, an E. Roberts class monitor, and she spends the rest of the Second World War as a depot ship for trawlers operating out of Portsmouth. The Marshal Ney. I have to say, I am absolutely surprised by this, and I treble, quadruple, and quintuple checked this. She was used during 1919. She was used as a base ship at Queenborough, before being disarmed and becoming a depot ship at Fort Blockhouse from 1920. She is renamed Vivid in July 1922. It then serves as an accommodation ship for the Stoker training group at Devonport, where she remained until 1957. Now, during that time, she's renamed Drake in 1934 and Alunia II in 1947. She's not broken up till 1957. So, the poor Marshal Sul is scrapped in 1946 And Ney, somehow, I was amazed as all of you, doesn't get broken up till 1957. I was expecting, whenever researching this ship, and I seem to forget it, and then when I go back and look at her again, I receive it again. I'm surprised the Royal Navy doesn't give her a Viking funeral. I mean, I am surprised in 1918 it's not 2 minutes past 11. War is over. Blow that thing up now. Every single battleship in the Grand Fleet, aim, fire. First one to sink the Ney makes us all happy. I don't know how. Anyway, but they're useful ships. Final bit, I want, there was this name which came up in this story, in this history. And it's a name which cannot be discounted in history. It's Sir Hugh Justin Tweedy, and I wanted to talk about him. He is a superstar. And this is that list of his career, by the way, is his career before getting command of the Marshal, and I've done up to the end of World War One, because after that he goes into various Rear Admiral and various ranks, becoming Commander-in-Chief of the Nor in 1933. He doesn't retire from the Royal Navy till, well, theoretically 1936, but he then gets used by the Navy in other duties till 1939, and in 1940, joins the Liverpool convoy pool and then the Cardiff convoy pool as with the rank of Commodore Second Class. In 1940, he technically reverts to the retired list, but does all sorts of other random things. But let's talk about his career before then. Let's consider this man. Okay. He's born in Kent. He's the son of General Michael Tweedy of the Royal Artillery. Unsurprisingly, his son turns out to be fairly good with guns. Can't think why. He joins the Royal Navy in 1891. And he's a midshipman for years, which is quite normal this time. He sees the collision of Victoria with Campertown and the sinking of Victoria from the previous HMS Dreadnought, not the 1905 one, the previous one. He then serves in Rodney and the sailing corvette Active. His years of service, if you think about this, he serves in the Royal Navy pretty much, or very adjacent to the Royal Navy, 1891 to 1940 something. Even during World War II, when he's technically retired again from Convoy Commodore, he's still wandering around doing a lot with the Navy and with the services and helping out. I'm trying to look. I know he got married in Japan to a lovely lady. He married, Constance Marion Crossman in 1907 in Japan. They had 3 sons and 4 daughters together. One of whom was killed in 1930. One of the sons was killed in 1937, serving in the Guides Cavalry. I'm not sure where. One of his sons, Hugo, got a DSC as commander of HMS Tyndale during the St. Nazaire raid. Vere Tweedy served in the Gold Coast Regiment of the Royal West African Frontier Force and got a military cross in 1945 during an action behind Japanese lines. in Burma. They are a very brave family. His list of appointments for ships: Virago, Phoebe, Flying Fish, Minerva, Albion. He was commanded destroyers regularly: Bernetta, Wolf, Chameleon, and Hope in a group under Reginald as part of one of Reginald Twit's flotilla in 1910. He ends World War One as the Commodore, in charge of flotillas in the Grand Fleet, in charge of 150 destroyers. This is a really, really cool officer, and yet in 1915 he is saddled with the Marshal Ney. And I just love the response to it. He seems to judge it just right to keep the crew going and build esprit de corps and keep going despite this. And it's an excellent example of an officer to follow. The amount of history he's involved in is amazing. But there is one story I always remember of him, and this is probably going to take us to the 40-minute mark. I mean, we're telling it and then talking about the other things. So I do apologise. This has been slightly longer than these supposed long patrol petitions of this are sort of supposed to be. Before he's technically a lieutenant, which he's promoted to technically in 1899, but seems to get it in roughly 1898 as sort of acting lieutenant. He's given his first command. The governor of Sierra Leone's paddle yacht, the Countess of Derby. And it's for operation on the Bumfuff River. And there's an uprising due to the hut tax being imposed. And yes, that was just as popular as the poll tax, but let's put it this way, the people who were protesting it came a lot more organised and a lot better armed. Anyway, he is tasked to transport a detachment of troops up the river to attack the rebel position. Those troops get lost. So Tweedy, remember, technically a midshipman acting lieutenant at this point, forms a second native militia, trains them, leads them in a successful operation against the rebel position and takes them, and then goes and finds the troops. It's just a case of he's just cool, and it's so much history. And okay, yes, that's Empire, and we can be on against the realities. They should we can debate what they should or shouldn't been there, not, and should have had Empire or anything in the first place. Yeah, they had it, but they shouldn't have. You can still say that someone who manages that in the face of those scenarios at the age he would have been then. Because let's think about that. He's born 1877. We're talking 1898. He's 21 years old. 22 at most. 21 years old. And he has the strength of character, the fortitude, that when the troops, the professionals he has taken upriver, get lost and cannot find the enemy, and he goes, he reports back, he volunteers, then goes forward, raises his own militia, takes them back up the river, trains them as they're going, carries out the operation, takes out the rebel position, and then recovers. That is a very, very cool, very, very calm, very, very capable naval officer. And every time someone asks me, why does the Royal Navy seem to manage when it's in these situations where it really shouldn't, where all the stats and everything else are equal against it, it's down to the quality of the officers and the crew. Down to men like Sir Hugh Justin Tweedy. and other navies and other armies and air force. It's all the same. You're very lucky. Your first defense, your first security is not the technology. It's not the weapon systems. It's not the fortifications. It's the quality of your personnel. Which is why it's important to retain and look after personnel you train and who are good. These days, especially when as much of it is up here as it is this, you know, I'm a big, strong guy. But I always try and use this first. Because if you consider modern warfare, it's far more about brain power than brawn. It does come down to brawn. Oh, trust me. The day that the infantrymen infantry stop having to have a heavy dose of pack mule in their genes is a long way away. But you need to look after them. This officer was looked after. Many others were. And sometimes I look at the quality of life granted to petty officers in the interwar periods. Yes, it's not amazing, but there is something sometimes there you're looking at it and going, they're almost managing to achieve more and take care of them more. If you consider the accommodations blocks we're dealing with today, quite a lot of them are very old. When they were new, they were very good for their time. Now they are old. They needed to be replaced a decade ago. You cannot retain people if you cannot make it viable for their life to support it. He was able to support a wife who she seems to have had a very active life running various charities and things, and 3 sons and 4 daughters, 7 children, whilst serving a long and illustrious career in the Royal Navy. He marries her in 1907. He's already been in the service for 16 years by that point. He'll be in the service for another 23. No, 33. Yeah. Can't read my own handwriting. And he can do it because of the way he's supported. And because you have this quality officer, you turn the Marshal Ney from being something which is frankly should have been given an honourable dispatch the moment it came out of trials into something which was actually able to be used after a fashion until it could be replaced. So while it was necessary to have it, it was still available because of the quality of officer. Right, so what have we got coming up? Ooh. I haven't updated it, but the results are in for the 13th and 20th of May, results from Patron. And I will just get them. But as you can see, we have live is Hawker aircraft in the 1920s and 1930s on the 6th. I'm rather looking forward to that because I'm going to be talking through the various aircraft like I've done before, but I wanted to do the Hawker live because I like Hawkers. And I think the aircraft they produced in the 1920s and 30s are pretty darn cool. So, the winners are Dan F. Tuesday, May the 4th, Everything Wrong with Star Wars Fleets, which got 14 votes, and Paul from Chicago, Coal, Canals, Convoys, and Coastal Carrying, Traffic Around the British Isles from 1939 to 1945. So those will be patrons 23 and 24. More than likely, I'm sorry, but the everything wrong with Star Wars fleets will probably wait till the 13th. And the coal canals and convoys, well, thankfully, I've got a new book which should help me with that, which is should be enable me to do that on the 20th. Thank you, everyone, for for voting. The Audacious class carriers came in third with 10 votes. Yogi Kans, after the death of Admiral Yamamoto, came in at 8 votes. Jeffrey B. from Bosun the Chief Gunner got 6 votes. Bellanora's Battle of Navarino got 7 votes. And the Pacific Ocean Theatre and South Pacific Theatre Coast Watchers, suggested by Robert K., got 4 votes. Thank you as over to the patrons who voted. There were 68 votes in total. And that's cool. I'll be putting up very shortly the suggestions for June. So those people who would like to suggest topics for June, please go along to Patreon. That will be live very shortly. And for those interested in suggesting voting, thank you for being patrons. Thank you for doing that. I hope you've enjoyed this, and there are more to come. Trust me, there are a lot more of these to come. There are at least 5 more monitors, and I am taking suggestions from foreign monitors to talk about after this, including coastal defense battleships where they have been used in land attack roles. I will say this because of the class which I will be doing in June, because they are an interesting class. You can look them up before we talk about them. The Gorgon class. I'm sure you will find them as interesting as I do. Frankly, I think they're freaking cool. Thank you, everyone. And remember, if you like the videos, please like. If you would like to see more, please subscribe. Maybe press the little bell down there. And there are links to Discord and Patreon down below in the description. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a nice day, and I'm sorry this is late. As said, Marshal has been interesting. Take care.